Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
The heat and humidity really does push you over the edge. Most people stay indoors as much as possible during the hot, humid months. If they have AC, or they hang out in stores, etc., it's just like unbelievably intense. I used to live up north and the summers get hot and humid there too, but Florida is a whole other thing. It feels inescapable, endless, and the funny thing about it is that you start getting so used to it that by the time the weather cools off a bit, most Floridians feel like they're in Antarctica when it's 60 degrees. You'll see locals wearing winter clothing in temperatures that people up north or elsewhere in the world will find springy t-shirt weather. The heat and humidity makes enjoying nature a joke. You just feel like some kind of underwater creature constantly sweating. Your clothes get absolutely drenched in sweat. If you don't shower and change clothes daily, you feel disgusting. You have to have water with you at all times. Walking a few miles in the summer is exhausting. You start slowing down, have to find shade to stop and recover, and sometimes feel on the verge of passing out. When police do searches, sometimes their dogs can't handle even 20 minutes in the heat. It really makes me wonder how bears and other hairy large mammals survive in the woods all year round. It gives you some feeling of desperation, like you're in hell itself already. You just want to cool down, but a window AC unit barely does the trick, and if you're trying to save money, you can't just have your house AC blasting a cool 69 degrees 24/7. Even in a shady spot where no sun has touched it all day long, in the summer it will be over 90 degrees all day long and the humidity will feel suffocating. Rational, sane people handle it, but just imagine a person already teetering on the edge, stupid, not thinking of any consequences. The heat pushes them over the edge and they do crazy shit.
13 years old, just moved to a new house in Miami, Florida. Live literally 3/4 of a mile from the thick Everglades, lots of giant bugs and shit. Mom tells me about a train that passes near 12, clearly remembering walking around and seeing train tracks nearby my house near the Everglades. Sleeping months later, hear the train again a year and a half later. Tell Mom the train woke me up so I got bad sleep.
What train?
The fuck you talking about, Mom? The train you told us about passes at night. It's really annoying.
I have no idea what you are talking about.
Walking with my brother and his friends near the spot where the train tracks were months later. No fucking train tracks, the turnpike is there and that is all until thick Everglades. Think my life is a fucking lie, have a goddamn mental breakdown. A year later, 15, hear the train again. Nope. JPEG WTF, you aren't real. Haven't heard the train since. Also my entire family never heard of any train. Still remember what the train horn sounds like perfectly.
Be around 7 or 8 in Cub Scouts. Go out camping with Cub Scouts, little brother and father. At nighttime, everyone's over at the campfire. I have ADHD, which tends to make me want to explore. Go near a hiking trail we took during the day. Live in Florida, so gators. Find gator tail come out of bushes. Be dumb as fuck little kid, so I throw a rock to get it to move. Remember the reports of a 12-foot long alligator in Florida around 10 years ago? I do. Gator tail disappears and a giant snout comes out of the bush. Nope. Betamax. As I run, I look back and see my entire head, eyes burned into my memory. Run back to camp crying and scared. One other kid says he saw it later that night. Never wander out into the woods alone again. I remember he was the biggest fucker I had ever seen. His eyes were dark green and beautiful. However, I had the shit scared out of me. Might be my memory fucking with me, but another kid said he saw it running off from the direction I saw it later on that night. I have a few more if you want to hear them. Be 12 years old and moved to a different area in Florida. Have a big as dog, Great Dane Greyhound mix. Have to take her for daily walks. Decide to walk her into the forest, my friends and I play in because I was still a dumbfuck kid. Decide to go deep into the woods, and keep walking in one direction. Can still hear friends in the background, but can't see them. They must be loud as fuck for me to hear them. Find clearing and decide to stop, scratched up from vines and shit. Hear whispering, and have no idea where. Can't tell what it's saying until I hear my name. Freak out and turn around. Old as fuck man standing there. Seems transparent almost, very dusty though, with a white overlay almost. Has a tomahawk in hand. Everything silent until I look over at my dog barking up a storm. Sound returns to me. Drop leash and run the fuck out of there. My dogs are smart as hell and follow me. Parents never let me out in the woods again. A year later we moved back to the beach, and I learn why they never let me back in the forest. It will be a nope story from their perspective. Be 13 years old. Move away from Shitview back to where I was born. Right on the beach and shit. Hurricane be movin' through. Apparently town shuts down power for precaution. Can look out the window and see violent winds and shit miles out off the beach. Parents decide to make a ghetto campfire. Roasting marshmallows over a light bulb and telling scary stories. Parents mention a true story. Before they got married they actually traveled the US in an old Jeep. For the story I will put myself in my father's position.
Be driving in the middle of nowhere with my soon-to-be wife. On a dirt road driving through a forest near a hill. Town has ghost stories about hill. Man died during the territory war between cowboys and Indians. His ghosts still wander the forest. Don't believe the shit. Driving. When dude walks out of the forest. No time to turn. Hit him and he goes over the Jeep. Stop immediately to see if he is alright. Wearing an old duster. Long white hair, almost glowing. He begins to get up. So I ask if he is okay. Holds up a tomahawk as if he is about to throw. Get the fuck in the Jeep ready to drive. Hear thump at the back of the Jeep as we drive off. Look back. He is standing there watching us. End up stopping in town. Tomahawk entry mark on back of Jeep, but no tomahawk. He follows us, so we try to move every year or so. That is the story he told me. He looked at me as if to see my reaction. He shrugged it off as just a story, to not scare my lil bro I guess. But the look on my mom's face told me otherwise. On top of that they got in a fight that night over the story. I have never seen that man again. I am thankful for it.
I live in the midst of some thicker woods and a smallish swamp in mid-Florida. Experienced some strange shit running through the woods at night with my cousin. Rain just finished falling. Everything's damp as fuck. Cousin and I throw on some old ponchos we found lying around and decided to kill some time exploring the woods at night. We run trails in these woods all the time during the day, and a few times at night before this. Know the layout by heart, just about. Take some shittier mag lights and hit the trails. Trails aren't wide, vehicle-carved paths that are easily walked, but are formed by grazing cattle that live in the woods. It's actually a massive farmland owned by some old fuck somewhere. Real old-fashioned, no cameras on trees or anything. We do our thing, climb a tree or two, dodge big-ass banana spider webs frequently, jump shorter palm fronds, get cut up a bit by bigger ones, nothing new. We decide we're done, start heading back. Before long, we hear rustling in the bushes. Not unheard of, there are animals out here. We stop moving, the bushes about 15 feet away stop rustling, we move, they rustle. Mind starts racing. Big cats are a rarity, but they are out here. Even black bears. Of course, it's just night, so my mind is turning a raccoon or armadillo into a giant clawed beast. Cousin and I say fuck all and start high-stepping out of there, staying on the path best we can. Don't hear shit as we run. Cool. Stop at the fence, we need to jump to be in my neck of the woods/property area. Rustling almost immediately in bushes about 5 feet away. We freeze and stare at each other, trying to gauge how the other is reacting, I'm sure. Wait. Being soaked to the bone with rainwater Eve collected from plants doesn't help when my body goes ice fucking cold. Cousin is a dude, by the way, failed to specify. I know you heard that too, he says. Or asks. Sounds freaked out. We were letting the darkness play hell with our imaginations, surely. We wait for more noise. Wait. The voice is weak and feminine. Also, it's hard to describe the sound where distance is concerned. It sounds distressingly close, but almost like someone is saying it clearly from far away. Close and far at the same time. The fuck? Like protagonists, we stand stock fucking still and turn our flashlights slowly toward the palm bushes. Can't see much more than wet greenery reflecting the lights we're shining on them. Wait. We hopped the fence like fucking kangaroos or something and took off to my house. Didn't quite sprint, just moved anxiously. To this day we joke that a woman was in the bushes, mauled by some animal and trying to get us to help her as she lay close to death. Just a joke though. No news of missing people around here. Went back out about 2 days later and no human remains were lying around. Don't know what the fuck was out there, but I'm a little more apprehensive about running those trails now.
I live in Inverness, Citrus County. Originally from Sumter County. Lots of spooky happenings out that way. The house I grew up in was built on land that was the site of one of the battles of the Second Seminole War. Seeing shadows dash through the woods and hearing disembodied voices while in the swamps there was pretty normal. I have too many stories of that kind of shit. Also, back in the old days they used to hang people from the bridge just down the road from there. That land is soaked in blood. The trees look gnarled and twisted, the whole area just feels off. My dad was murdered out there for one. He was a correctional officer for a local prison. His car was found on the side of the road, his keys under the driver's seat. His legs had been broken cleanly just below the knees and he had been run over twice. I never knew him, as I was an infant when it happened, but everyone tells me he was a great guy, he had no enemies to speak of really. My grandmother had a nightmare the night it happened. She said she saw him kneeling down in the darkness, saying, "Please don't, I have a wife and child." The case was closed very quickly, and was never solved. Numerous murders have taken place out on that stretch of highway that were similar to his. Some where the victims' bodies have claw marks and scratches and such. I used to wander the woods in the area as a kid. I would often hear shrieks and screams at night while walking. I grew up in the swamps, so I know what panthers, bobcats and foxes sound like. Their vocals can be creepy as hell, but what I heard on occasion was something different. It didn't sound natural. A lot of the people that lived in the area had seen some bipedal creature with dark fur off and on throughout the years. The ones I spoke to about it said that it was thin or gaunt, and had been spotted watching them, either through a window or outside while they did yard work or something like that. I saw something fitting the description once when I was exploring the swamps at sunset. I'm pretty sure it wasn't a black bear because this thing walked upright and was way too tall. I could hear it breathing, following me on my way out of the woods, always staying at a good distance. I honestly sort of believe it's a manifestation of the hatred and violence soaked into that land. My dad, before he died, my mom and my uncle were driving on that same road late at night and some guy who was all torn up came running out in the middle of the road. Of course they stopped, and the guy says nothing but starts trying to open the passenger side door. My mom said he looked like he had been mauled by a wild animal, blood everywhere, one of his ears torn off. My uncle just told my dad to go, so being freaked out, he did. When they got back into a nearby town, they called 911 and told them about the guy and that he needed help. The police and ambulance never found the guy.
Gather round X, and I shall regale you with the tale of Old Hitter, the giant shark who feasts upon the bodies of self-ending people. Tampa Bay is a large bay on the west coast of Florida. At its mouth resides a massive suspension bridge which spans the bay and connects the mainland to the peninsula of Pinellas County. Under the bridge runs a deep shipping channel in which a great many sharks reside. One of these sharks is an absolutely massive great hammerhead named Old Hitter. Old Hitter was named after The Hitter on account of his or her ferociousness and is purported to be over 20 feet long. What makes Hitter special, however, is the rumor that he grew so large after decades of eating the bodies of jumpers who used the massive Skyway Bridge to commit suicide, of which there have been many. Old Hitter is supposedly very old and spends his time between Tampa Bay and the southwest tip of Florida. There have been many sightings, but no one has ever managed to catch him. It should also be noted that the mouth of Tampa Bay and the Skyway Bridge are themselves believed to be haunted due to a horrible accident which led to the collapse of a previous incarnation of the bridge, killing dozens, among which included a bus full of children. People have claimed to see hammerheads large and old enough to be Old Hitter, but usually at a distance and from above, so they were unable to see the belly and therefore determine the gender. Hitter is suspected to be female as they tend to grow larger than males. Many sea creatures possess what is known as indeterminate growth, which essentially means that with sufficient living space, food supply and time, there is no limit to the size of which they can grow, though it should be noted that diminishing returns come into play at some point. Large hammerheads are not uncommon on the west coast of Florida, but as an ocean-going shark they have a broad range. Hitter is special because he has developed a taste for human corpses and not just tarpon or stingrays. That, and she is old as fuck and clever as all hell. Notoriously difficult to catch or track. Standard fish story stuff.
2006. Visiting St. Augustine. In middle school, I was a really weird kid into ghosts and dead things. Way too excited about going because St. Augustine is the oldest city in America, so I was expecting a ton of scary shit. Me and my brother go into the ocean. It was a really choppy day, there were a lot of big waves. Swimming in the ocean, suddenly feel something touching on my feet. Look over at my brother, he's completely underwater, thrashing like he's drowning. Screaming that something is grabbing him underwater. I look down and see two figures swimming underwater, one right underneath me. They both look at me and suddenly disappear into the ocean. We never talked about it. Back at our hotel that same night, I remember not being able to sleep because I had to share a room with my parents. My dad was snoring. I look up into the mirror and I see this woman dressed in something like a Victorian nightgown, brushing her hair. We made eye contact and then she disappeared. Florida sucks.
On the phone, so no green text. Anyway, this is a story from my father's days. So my father, let's call him Sam, was on a class trip to Florida back in the 80s and was out partying with his friends out in the swamps. One of his friends goes off into the woods to take a piss. Around this time his friend has been gone for about an half hour, so him and his friend, Gerald, go look for the guy. As they are going through the area they last heard from the guy, they hear what my dad described as a banshee being skinned alive. Haim and Gerald go and investigate. Closer to the noise he sees about 6 people wearing black cloaks with pointy hats. As he sneaks up closer he can see that they are encircled around whatever was making that god-awful noise. It was my dad's friend being stabbed and ripped at by these people. Gerald books it and my dad runs after him. They soon found a pay phone and the first thing my dad does is call up his parents to come get him. He originally lived in Michigan at the time, so there was no way they could get to him. So my dad hangs up the phone and starts hearing chanting coming from the woods. He and Gerald are both bawling their eyes out and the chanting only gets closer. Gerald and him both get up and run for their lives towards civilization. It takes a solid 20 minutes for them to run back to their hotel rooms and tell the teacher what happened. Police were called and immediately asked my dad and Gerard to leave it be for now, as there have been multiple reports of people disappearing in that area. Soon after the incident, they found the body skinned alive. It took getting my father drunk before he would tell me the story.
Nothing too specific, but the Everglades is a weird fucking ride in the middle of the night. For those that are unfamiliar with the Everglades, think endless swampy brush in every direction save for a single 2-lane highway called Alligator Alley. Alligator Alley connects the east coast of southern Florida to the west coast, bridging Naples and Fort Lauderdale. Lots of little campsites and rest stops along the way, but relatively unlit save for your own headlights and the moonlight if you catch a lucky break and it's not raining. Driven up and down a couple of times in the wee hours of the night. I've stopped at the campsites in the middle of the night to catch the full moon, but sped off when I started hearing weird grunts and soft drumming. On a 3 a.m. drive, I'm pretty sure I hallucinated some pale white thing in the brush trying to keep up with my car, but I'm pretty sure I can blame sleep deprivation. Even so, when I got to the nearest rest area, the cashier didn't seem too shocked to see me spooked. Some of the land there is Indian ground, and supposedly there's ruins of some sort sunk deep in the mire.
Beamy, traveling from Gainesville for the weekend home from college. 2000, heading east on 40 just off of 326. See a broken down van on the side of the road. About a mile down the road, see a scummy guy about my age walking down the road. Figure his van broke down and ask him if he needs a ride. Have shit in the cab of my truck, so tell him to jump in the back and open the sliding middle window. We start heading down 40 and get to whatever that first town is. He tells me to turn right down one of those dirt roads. A little ways down, he offers me a joint. We light up and pass it through the window. He tells me to turn onto one of the trails leading into the forest. I'm stupid and high, so I do. We go for what seems like an hour twisting through trails. Left, right, left, changing trails the whole time. I'm completely lost. Come around a turn and there is a tree over the trail. Oh fuck.x. Suddenly 4 dudes come out of the woods. Look like hills have eyes. I'm fucking dead. JPEG. Can't turn around. Dude tells me to get out of the truck. Start thinking I'm going to get assaulted. See that there is a way to get around the tree on the right, but it's all really soft sugar sand and I have to get up an embankment. Luckily truck has 4-wheel drive. Say my thanks to God that it has self-locking hubs, or I would have had to get out of the truck to engage 4x4. Throw the truck into 4 high and pop the clutch to mash the gas. Jump over the embankment and into the sugar sand around the tree. One guy tries to reach for my door and the guy in the back starts reaching through the middle window. Going through a trail at high speed, so the guy in the back is having a hard time standing up. Finally loses his balance and gets tossed around in the bed of the truck before he jumps out. Drive through the trails for another 2 hours trying to find my way out. Stop every now and then to see if I can hear the road. A few times I hear an engine and the hillbillies yelling. Finally, after about 3 hours lost on the trails, I end up back on 40. Ended up on a trail running parallel to 40 and just get lucky enough to notice the pavement through a break in the trees. Enough of a clearing to get my truck through. End up back on 40 right by that little car wash on the north side of the road near one of the Astors. To this day I still wonder what they were going to do to me and how many others have done it too.
So my forestry buddy is a really cool guy. Never meets a stranger. Deep in the forest one day he comes across a guy's camp. Dude sitting there has a small fire going. My buddy introduces himself and tells him he's with forestry and what he's doing out there. Says the camper is really nice and they strike up a conversation. Everything is really cordial and my buddy gives the guy some cigs and they chat some more. Buddy finally asks the guy what he's doing all the way out in the woods, if he's camping or living. That's when things start getting weird. Guy tells my buddy he's a detective and he's trying to track down a serial killer that he thinks is in the area. Of course my buddy doesn't believe him, but he thinks he's just trying to get a rise out of him, so he plays along. Guy starts telling my buddy that he's been on his trial for the past few months and that he thinks he is hiding out in the forest, but he's having a hard time catching up to him. Again, my buddy isn't thinking too much of it, just some guy LARPing. Then the guy goes into a backpack and pulls out some Polaroids. He hands them to my buddy and tells him he has taken pictures of all the crime scenes he has been to. The Polaroids are all dead bodies. Probably about 20 different victims and about 80 photos. Now my friend was about 3 to 4 miles on foot from his truck, so he can't just run. He has to hang out and play it cool with the guy for another hour or so before telling the guy he has to get back to work. Guy starts questioning why he has to leave and if he wants to spend the night. My friend tells him that if he doesn't report in the next hour, people are going to start looking for him, and if they did, they might scare off the serial killer he is tracking, so it's best if he gets back so the investigation doesn't get fucked up. He said after he got about 100 yards from the camp, he just took off running back to the truck and got in and hightailed it out of there.
Officially, Florida has no native snakes larger than a rattlesnake. But I do get out in the swamps a lot. Try to go on a kayaking trip to reconnect with old friends. We decide to do this canal that stretches through the Everglades. Laughably out of shape but afraid to back out. Everything goes better than expected and we make camp. I try to fish even though I have no idea how to really fish. See something big in the water. Nope, the fuck back 20 feet thinking it is a huge gator. It is a giant fucking snake, bigger than any gator I've seen swimming through the water. Did not know snakes swam. We have anacondas in Florida.
I work at a motorcycle shop in Hillsborough. Florida is a haven for a lot of bikers from out of state and is actually a huge place for biker gangs. Thing is, they keep to themselves and tend to not wear cuts, their vests, when they ride anymore. Florida is mostly split in half, with the Hells Angels running the East Coast and the Mongols running the Gulf. The Warlocks have Orlando and actually had instigated a fairly violent gang war against the other two earlier this year. I live in Mongol territory. They are actually very nice, mostly Marine vets, and leave you alone if they know you do the same. Of course, a big name in the Mongols was shot in the head at a traffic light a few blocks away from our shop not too long ago. To add on to what I wrote here, Florida is a big destination for criminals from other states. It's easy to disappear here and find work that pays under the table. Most construction sites, which we never run out of, are manned by a lot of out-of-state felons, drifters, and people dodging child support. They do good work though. Our state law enforcement also has a history of not cooperating with other states. Case in point, Ted Bundy came here after he escaped from prison in Colorado. After we caught him, Colorado wanted him back, but our state government told them to go fuck themselves. We are also a popular dumping ground for other states' homeless and mentally ill.
I live up in the Panhandle area and have heard stories of Russian mafia influence on the coast, which wouldn't surprise me at all. This area is absolutely fucking swarmed with tourists every spring break, and there are metric shitloads of hotels, back roads, beaches, docks, and crowds to just escape in. I am definitely confident this is a hotbed for human trafficking, as easy tourists are everywhere. I used to work at the Big Green P in Daytona on the beach side. There was this guy that shopped at our store. Some kind of Habib, though I don't know what variety. He always had 3 or 4 different young Russian girls with him. Started noticing some of the local restaurants and strip clubs had an abundance of young Russian girls working in them. I went to Sapporo's, Japanese steakhouse and sushi bar, for lunch a couple times a week. Made friends with one of the sushi chefs. We ended up going out drinking every now and then. One time I asked what the deal was with all the Russians. He basically told me the Habib guy was a liaison for a relocating firm that was a subsidiary to the Russian mob. The firm would pay for the girls to get over here, usually around 5 to 10K. Then they set them up with a place to live, usually a no-bed 1-bath apartment. With like 10 other girls in it. He said the girls then had to pay back the firm through labor. So a place like the Japanese steakhouse would pay the firm like $100 per month, and the firm would keep the girls employed until the debt was paid off plus interest plus room and board. Some of the girls would get into drugs supplied by the liaisons, and thus fall even deeper in debt and would turn to sex work or even be sold to a pimp to pay off their drug debts. The girls were told the stripping jobs would pay the debts off faster, but it was mainly a trap because the ones that started stripping usually started using drugs in order to cope, so they could never pay down their debt because of the new debt accrued by the drug addiction.
954. Grandfather and grandmother have been dead a few years. End up moving into grandma's house because it's paid off. Have my girlfriend at the time visiting from college. Post-coital naked jam session in grandma's old bedroom. Door is open to the hallway. Facing door, head down, jamming. Look up into the doorway for a split second. Grandpa is standing there watching me. Old. Wearing the clothes I always remembered him for. He's not flesh color, has grayish blue hue to him, more blue than gray. Does not register at first. Look back down and go to continue playing. Holy fuck, it registers. Look back up and he's gone. My aunt made contact with them both through a psychic after that. When she walked through the door, the psychic greeted her by the nickname my grandma used to call her. There's no way she could have known. I didn't even know. He says they are happy on a beach and the man is making things. My grandpa was a retired engineer who for as long as I could remember would make the most intricate beautiful things out of wood. He was in his 80s and his hands were very shaky working with table saws and the like. He never hurt himself and he never made a mistake. 772. Spending day with GF. Making rounds around town. End up at bookstore. Fart around for a little bit and leave. Step out the door, step onto the sidewalk. Step off sidewalk. Feel a violent tremor in the earth. Look down and almost lose my footing. Stops abruptly. Couldn't have been longer than 3 seconds. Look up and everything is normal around me. People in the plaza are completely unfazed. Don't mention it for a few seconds. Figure I'm just imagining things. Think fuck it and ask my girlfriend. Hey, did you feel that? Yes. What was that? Felt like a mini earthquake. She agrees. We have no idea what to think about it. As long as I've lived in Florida, I've never felt anything similar. Never even really heard of an earthquake here. Save last year, but that was explained as an underwater explosion by the Navy.
Grew up in the pork and beans. No father, working girl mother and 3 older brothers. One of my brothers was killed when I was 4 years old over a $5 crap game. When I was about 6 years old, my mom met an old school Cuban dude who got her into Santeria. After that she stopped tricking and started living life right. But she was still poor and illiterate, so we stayed in the projects. As some of the only Cuban kids there, shit was fucking rough. All the black kids used to jump us. We stuck with the other Spanish kids, and eventually as we got a bit older some of the black kids started to respect us. I was 8 when my oldest brother started selling crack. This was around 93. He was working with a gang that was in control of the beans at the time. Eventually he had my other brother and I act as lookouts while they sold drugs on the corners. When I was 10, I was on the lookout when an old white dude appeared in the block. He looked like a crackhead, but all he did was stare at us too. My older brother goes to tell our oldest brother about the crackhead. He comes back with a couple other kids from the block and we all go to confront the white dude. We ask him, "Hey man, what are you doing here? Who do you know? What do you want?" He points at my oldest brother and says with a voice that sounds like it's been grinding in a gravel pit, "I know him." At that moment, his eyes roll to the back of his head and we all freak out and run. One of the kids runs to the corner store and calls 911 to pick up the dude. By the time the ambulance arrives, the crackhead is gone. We stay on the block until it's around midnight. That's when the big boys would come out to slang. The second the 3 of us arrive at the house, my mom freaks the fuck out. Literally falls to the floor. Starts crawling backwards, screaming and crying, pointing at my oldest brother. Nothing's wrong with him, but she's saying in Spanish, "What is that? What is that? Oh God, please help my son." We try to calm her down but it's no use. She won't even look at my brother without crying. He decides to stay out and slang and not freak our mom out. My other brother and I go to sleep. I wake up in the middle of the night and see my mom returning to the house. She must have stepped out while we were asleep. We always kept out light on, and I peek through my eyes and see she has a headless crow and some cigars in her hand. Decide to not get involved in this one. Next day she gives my oldest brother some red beads to wear to ward off the spirits. A few days later, we see the crackhead again. My brother, Fat Boy, a 13-year-old black kid who weighed like 250 pounds, and I go to confront him. "Hey man, what the fuck was that about yesterday?" He smiles and points at Fat Boy, and once again his eyes roll to the back of his head and we once again run. But don't call 911 this time. The next day, we go out to be on the lookout with Fat Boy but can't find him. We go to his house and his mom says he had left early in the morning but never came back from school. We start walking around looking for him, but no luck. A few days later a detective knocks on my mom's apartment and says he wants to talk to us about Fat Boy. We tell him what we know and heard, but they keep pressing us until my mom says we can't to the detective anymore. We go out on the block and hear from the other kids that Fat Boy was found dead in the glades. What the fuck? We tell my oldest brother about the crackhead, and he freaks out. That same day my brother buys his first pistol. He also starts joining my mom in her Santeria meetings. He never takes out the beads my mom gave him. Even when he showers, a few months later, he gets arrested for weapons possession. Obviously, he cannot bring his beads with him. A few days into his stay he gets into a fight that leaves him with a bad concussion. A few months later, once he recovers, he is sent out of jail and put on house arrest. Around this time, he starts dating a QT mixed girl who comes over on a regular basis. Within a few months he's off house arrest and back on the block again. At this point I'm like 12. My other brother started selling drugs too, so I started acting as his lookout. One day we hear a huge commotion and hear some gunfire. We run to our apartment and see my brother there with his girl. I ask him what happened and he says they saw the crackhead again and tried to jump him, but he pointed at my brother, and ripped off his beads from his wrist. One of the guys from the block tried to shoot the crackhead, but he said the bullets went through him like a ghost. After a few hours, when things cooled down, my brother and I go back outside to make some cash. We arrive back home a few hours later and there are cops everywhere. Ambulance 2. Shit, wait. Why is my mom outside hysterical? Oh shit. TLDR, someone got a shotgun and blasted my brother and his girlfriend through their bedroom window. Cops obviously said it was drug and gang related. Take us to the station, and they ask us a bunch of questions about his friends and all that. No one's knows shit, and my mom was hysterical and kept going on and on about he devil. We never saw the crackhead again. Few months after that my mother committed self-end. My older brother and I got put into foster care and were separated. We got put with nice white families and ended up not going to prison or with a bullet stuck in our heads. A few months ago we are driving through Miami reliving some of our fond memories. We decide to get a few drinks at Wynwood. As we park our car in one of the paid lots off North Miami Avenue across from Wood Tavern, who do we see? The crackhead. We stop in our tracks and just stare at him. He wasn't too far from Wood Tavern, and he starts staring at a group of girls that are walking by. And he points at them, then stares at us, smiles, then winks.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
The Florida School for Boys, also known as the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys, AGDS, was a reform school operated by the state of Florida in the panhandle town of Marianna from January 1, 1900, to June 30, 2011. For a time, it was the largest juvenile reform institution in the United States. A second campus was opened in the town of Okeechobee in 1955. Throughout its 111-year history, the school gained a reputation for abuse, beatings, assaults, torture, and even murder of students by staff. Despite periodic investigations, changes of leadership, and promises to improve, the allegations of cruelty and abuse continued. Many of the allegations were confirmed by separate investigations by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in 2010 and the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice in 2011. In 1903, an inspection reported that children at the school were commonly kept in leg irons. A fire in a dormitory at the school in 1914 killed 6 inmates and 2 staff members. A 13-year-old boy sent to the school in 1934 for trespassing died 38 days after arriving there. In 1968, Florida Governor Claude Kirk said, after a visit to the school where he found overcrowding and poor conditions, that somebody should have blown the whistle a long time ago. At this time, the school housed 564 boys, some for offenses as minor as school truancy, running away from home, or incorrigibility. They ranged in age from 10 to 16 years old. Officially, corporal punishment at the school was banned in August 1968. In 1982, an inspection revealed that boys at the school were hogtied and kept in isolation for weeks at a time, and the ACLU filed a lawsuit over this and similar mistreatment. By this time, the school was housing 105 boys aged 13 to 21. Lawsuits concerning the school led to federal control of Florida's juvenile justice system from 1987 onward. In 1985, it emerged that young ex-inmates of the school, sentenced to jail terms for crimes committed while there, had subsequently been the victims of torture at the Jackson County Jail. The method of torture was for the prison guards to handcuff the teenagers and then hang them from the bars of their cells, sometimes for over an hour. The guards stated that their superiors approved the practice and that it was routine. In 1994, the school was placed under the management of the newly created Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, which operated the school until its closure in 2011. By this time, the school had facilities to house 135 inmates, and many of the boys sent there had been convicted of assault or of committing lewd acts on other children. In late 2009, the school failed its annual inspection. Amongst other problems, the inspection found that the school failed to deal properly with the large numbers of complaints from the boys held there, including allegations of continued mistreatment by the guards. State Representative Daryl Rouson said that the system was struggling to move on from a long-standing culture of violence and abuse. Following revelations from former inmates who had been incarcerated at the school in the 1950s and 1960s, who described themselves as the White House Boys, the school was the subject of an extensive special report, For Their Own Good, published by the St. Petersburg Times in 2009. Allegations focusing on the 1960s included claims that one room was used for whipping white boys and another for black boys. The whippings were carried out with a 3-foot-long belt made of leather and metal and were thorough enough that the recipient's underwear became embedded in their skin. One inmate said that the punishments were severe but justified. Another claimed that he had seen a boy trapped in a running laundry dryer at the school and suspected the boy was killed. One former inmate claimed that he was punished in the White House 11 times, receiving a total of over 250 lashes. Others alleged that they were whipped until they lost consciousness and that the punishments were made harsher for boys that cried. Some former inmates also claimed that there was an assault room at the school where they were abused. The complainants said that some of the victims were as young as 9 years old. The team used ground-penetrating radar and excavations to identify where bodies are buried. However, in order to determine if the cause of death was from injury, illness, or murder, the bodies must be exhumed, which can be done only if a family member requests it. By December 2012, the researchers indicated that there are at least 50 graves on the grounds and that a second cemetery is likely to exist. Bones, teeth and artifacts from grave sites were sent to the University of North Texas Health Science Center for DNA testing. In January 2014, the University of South Florida announced that excavations have yielded remains of 55 bodies, almost twice the number official records say are there.
From the 1950s to 1970s, insurance adjusters noticed a strange peculiarity. An alarmingly amount of bodily dismemberment insurance claims were coming from one single small town in Florida. Men, women and entire families were taking out insurance policies with dismemberment clauses that paid out in the unfortunate event of limb loss. At one point, the majority of the town were amputees, and over 60% of all dismemberment claims in the country were coming from a town with a population in the low thousands. This earned the town the nicknames Stumptown and Nub City. In the 1980s, a documentary filmmaker went to investigate but was quickly met with sealed lips and death threats. He instead changed the title of the film and entire direction of the project. There is reported to be a fair amount of footage and interviews that didn't make the cut. Insinuations of mafia ties, unpaid debts and other theories and interviews by other journalists have been seemingly scrubbed from the internet as well. There is absolutely more to this story than simple insurance fraud. The payouts were considerable and paid by the limb, causing many to lose multiple limbs. Yet, the vast majority stayed within the podunk town and saw no noticeable increase in quality of life. 2/3 of all dismemberment claims across the U.S. were coming from this one town. That's over 66% of every dismemberment claim in a country whose population was almost 200 million people at the time. All coming from a single small town. Average payout was about $5,000 per limb. That's the equivalent to roughly $50,000 today. You'll be hard-pressed to find a person willing to remove limbs for $50,000 each, let alone the majority population of an entire town. There's absolutely more to this story that's never been unearthed. As mentioned, nobody saw any measurable quality of life increase from the money either. The town remained a dirt-poor small town that residents stayed in for the remainder of their lives. Of all the people I've seen, none even spent money on prosthetics. With those who removed multiple limbs often choosing both legs or an opposing leg and arm to maintain mobility with a crutch. What motivating forces could possibly be behind such actions? It can't just be money. We're talking about a whole town. Someone has to have some theories. It's just really difficult to wrap your head around. There was another man who took out insurance with 28 or 38 companies, said Murray Armstrong, an insurance official for Liberty National. He was a farmer and ordinarily drove around the farm in his stick-shift pickup. This day, the day of the accident, he drove his wife's automatic transmission car and he lost his left foot. If he'd been driving his pickup, he'd have had to use that foot for the clutch. He also had a tourniquet in his pocket. We asked why he had it and he said, snakes. In case of snake bite. He'd taken out so much insurance he was paying premiums that cost more than his income. He wasn't poor, either. Middle class. He collected more than $1 million from all the companies. It was hard to make a jury believe a man would shoot off his foot.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.